Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. I actually had to pull over to do tonight's episode. Two reasons. I have data that I need to look at and reference. And secondly, I had to retake this because I went over the 15 minutes. I just got really jacked up about what I found today on the internet. And I just started rambling about it. And I went over my 15 minutes. Otherwise, I can't post to YouTube. So I'm going to get right into it because I got to get to the point. Tonight's episode is about my predictions for week 1 of the NFL season and 6 upsets. And the way that I call them upsets is you're going to look at a couple of the games and say, Troy, that's not really an upset. But I love the power rankings on ESPN. I read the power rankings every week when they come out. I love the notes. And so the way that I look at an upset is if a team that was ranked lower beats a higher seeded team in the power ranking, that's an upset. That's the way that I'm calling upset. I have 6 games like that. And there are 3 of them that are probably true upsets. The other 3 are like, they're not really upsets. But according to the rankings, they were a lower seeded team, so it is an upset when you look at the rankings. But I need to get right into this. As I did my predictions, I went through and there are a ton of toss-up games here where you can just flip a coin and say, man, both of these teams are equal. Let's flip a coin. Let's pick a winner. And so when I was going through, being a sports guy and thinking I know a little bit something about the NFL, I said, well, I'll pick the home team because of home field advantage. And so I did that. I reviewed my picks, and I was okay with them. I'm like, hey, these are cool. But then I was scratching my head saying, you know what? I'm going to research this. And so I Googled NFL home field advantage. And this is where I fell in love with a new website. It is called sportscharts.com. I now follow them on Twitter. So go to my followers, look for Sports Charts, and follow them. There is some awesome information on this website. And I was just in awe. I spent like 30 minutes at work just looking at data. I love data. And they did it 2 ways. The first chart broke the information down from 1990 to the current year of the teams that won at home. And there was a tie. Green Bay Packers, Pittsburgh Steelers win 72% of the time at home. That's great. That's a full body of work from 1990, and that's great. Over the long haul, they win at home. The problem is, what have you done for me lately? In my job, my real job, I am a regional director of recruitment. And when I deal with my recruitment teams, I look at trends. What have you done in the past 4 weeks to show me that you're going to get to your goal? And so I'm looking at this. That's great that the Packers and Steelers long-term win since 1990. But what have they done for me lately? Well, as I scroll down, here we go with Sports Charts. Once you know, they broke down the home winning percentage, the away winning percentage since the NFL went to the 8-division format, since 2002. Amazing data. I exported that to an Excel spreadsheet and I just analyzed it and I looked at it and I came up with some good stuff. Not going to get into every team and who's good on the road and who's good at home. But there were a couple of things that stood out to me. And I'm going to talk about those. There is one team, only one team of 32 that wins more on the road than they do at home. You have about 4 or 5 minutes to think about who that team is. And I want you to tweet to me. Did you answer that question correctly? Who is the only team since the NFL went to 8 divisions to have a better record on the road than they do at home? I think you're going to be surprised. But let's look at the obvious. The best home winning teams, and I'm only going to go through the top 3, have to cut it down because of time. But it's no doubt the Patriots are best at home. 83% of the time they win at home. Then the Ravens are second, 76% of the time. Doesn't faze me. They've been a good team over the past 11 years. Super Bowls, playoff bursts, they win at home. They take care of business at home. And the third team may not be so true the last 2 years, but it's the Indianapolis Colts. Because we have to remember, a lot of that time was spent with Peyton Manning as the quarterback. So it'd be interesting to see what is their home record the past 2 years. Probably not at the 69% that it was for the past 11 years. But here's what really got me. I was thinking that the average winning percentage at home would be a lot higher than it was. I was thinking somewhere along the lines of maybe 66, 67%, 2 out of 3 home teams win every week. Wrong. The data shows home teams only win 57% of the time. Can you believe that? Only 57% of the time do they win at home. Now, again, this is just regular season. Does not include the postseason. But only 57% of the time. That surprised me. I thought it was going to be in the 60%. So now I'm thinking, is there really a home field advantage? Maybe for some teams that have over a 60% winning percentage at home. But as a league, you have just as good a chance of winning on the road as you do at home. And so that means that on the road, 43% of the teams are winning on the road. Just mind-boggling. I was like, wow. I didn't think that it would be that close. I thought there'd be a bigger discrepancy. And so quickly, I want to go over the best and the worst teams on the road. Of course, the best teams on the road, the Patriots, 70% of the time. Second was the Colts again. Now again, that's a lot with Peyton Manning. I don't know what the last 2 years were. And so it'll be interesting to see what Luck's record is on the road. But the one that jumped out at me and really got me thinking was number 3. Over the past 11 years, the Philadelphia Eagles have won 62% of their games on the road. Now, in comparison, the Kansas City Chiefs have only won 36% of the time on the road. But when you look at the Eagles' record, who was the coach? Andy Reid. So was it the players or was it the coach? A combination of both. But if the Chiefs can now improve, because they win 56% of the time at home, what if they win 50% of the time on the road? They are now going to be a playoff team. And can we contribute that to Andy Reid? Will Andy Reid be able to help the Chiefs win on the road? The data is telling me yes. And if we go back to my sleeper team from yesterday, I think it's the Chiefs. And if Andy Reid can coach that team to win on the road, you're going to see the Chiefs as a wild card. Now, to answer the question, who is the team that wins more on the road than at home? I was surprised. And there's only one of them. The New York Giants. 58% of the time, they are winning on the road. And they win at home only 53% of the time. So when you got the Giants at home, it's a toss-up, but they win 58% of the time on the road. I was surprised by that. The only team to have a better road record than a home record. So, hey, when you're at the bar with your friends, throw that trivia out, folks. And if you want to verify it, go to sportscharts.com. It's right there in black and white. Now, let's get to my predictions. I'm not going to go over every game. I'm going to go over the 6 teams that are ranked lower in the power rankings that beat a higher seeded team than them. And I'm going to start with the easy ones that you're going to say, well, Troy, that's not really an upset. But the power rankings tell me they're ranked lower. They're going to win. That's an upset. The first is the Browns over the Dolphins. The Browns are 28 in the power rankings. The Dolphins are 20. I think the Brownies take care of business at home. I think they're going to go ahead. And as Evan said yesterday, he thinks they're the sleeper team in the AFC to make the playoffs. But I think the Browns beat the Dolphins at home. My second game is the Cowboys over the Giants. Now this kind of contradicts what I just said, that the Giants are a great road team. But I'm going to tell you, I don't really get impressed much in the preseason, but I saw a little bit of that Cowboys defense, and I think it's for real. They've got some players back. They're moving to a new scheme, and I liked what I saw. I think the Cowboys are going to hold at home because they are a pretty good home team. The records from Sports Charts tells me that they win about 54% of the time. I mean, it's still a toss-up. But I'm going with the Cowboys at home because I was impressed in the preseason with what they've done with the new scheme and getting a lot of players back from injury. My third upset, and I know I have a ton of Viking fans that listen, and you're probably going to hate me, but I'm taking the Lions at home over the Vikings. And the reason I'm doing this isn't because of stellar home winning percentage by the Lions, because it's not that great. But I think it's the Vikings' inability to win on the road at 36%. And I'm not sold on Ponder being the quarterback and having a passing game. Yes, they have Adrian Peterson, and he may run for 150, 160 yards. But I also like what the Lions have on offense with Bush, Johnson, Stafford, and Pettigrew. I think they have enough weapons to hold at home this week and beat the Vikings at home in a tough rival game in week 1. My next upset, the Saints over the Falcons. I don't think the Saints are going to win the division. I think the Falcons are going to win the division. This purely goes from the numbers I saw. The Falcons only win 45% of the time on the road. Now I know everybody's going to say, Troy, on paper that Saints defense is terrible. The Falcons offense is going to tear them up. I don't think so in week 1. I don't think so in week 1. I think there's enough energy in that building because the Saints play very well at home. And again, the stats are not going to lie. They win 57% of the time at home. 56.25, so 56% of the time. But I think with the return of Peyton, I think that stadium's going to be buzzing. I think they just have the home field advantage in week 1. I think they beat the Falcons. But that doesn't change my mind. The Falcons are going to win the division, but I think the Saints win in week 1. Then my next surprise upset, and this is probably the biggest one of them all. I think the Panthers beat the Seahawks in week 1. And this is why. The Seahawks have to travel from the West Coast to the East Coast. And history tells us West Coast teams struggle when they go to the East Coast. And I think since it's in Carolina, I think that the Panthers are going to take care of the Seahawks in week 1. So that is my big upset of week 1. And then I saved my Packers for last. And I am not picking the Packers just because I am a Packer fan. I think that loss in the playoffs last year really made the Packers upset. And it's been stirring in their gut since the loss. I think they go into San Francisco. It's a close game. I think the Packers win in overtime on a field goal with their shaky kicker, Mason Crosby, and it revitalizes him to have a good year. But I think they win by 3 in overtime. My time is running out to publish this. I'll see you at the next red light, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you on Monday.